Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello and a good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the show. Good morning, all of that stuff. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk a text line, 417-447-KSGF. We're going to have Congressman Burleson. We'll chat with him coming up a little bit after 6:30, get the lowdown, the latest on the continuing resolution, how all that fits in. It can be very confusing, frankly. It's sort of boring. I say that. Maybe not boring as much as redundant. Just seems like these conversations occur every so often, and the outcome is always the same, and we always hope for a different outcome. And that's not the fault of the few Freedom Caucus members, for example, and some outside of the Freedom Caucus. Of course, Congressman Burleson, a member of the Freedom Caucus, who has really, been the outrageous extremist that vote the way they campaign on getting things under control, and then get in there and find that the vast majority of other elected officials are not doing the same thing. Many of them run on that, but once they get in there, they don't do it. And so we have these conversations, and $34-36 trillion in debt at this point, and it's just like never ending in sight, and we know about the inevitable, should things not change drastically, complete collapse of all these programs. And the very people who run around screaming about how desperately they're needed are the ones who scream every time somebody steps up and tries to fix them in a way that will make them last and not collapse. The people who are trying to say, it's like screaming at the lifeguard. You got somebody drowning, and so the lifeguard jumps in to save them, and then the person who pointed out the drowning person in the first place, or who, that's their friend, their family member, and they care about, they start yelling at the lifeguard, "What are you doing? What are you doing in there? You're going to hurt him. Leave him alone." Hey, no, this person's drowning. If I don't step in and help, they will cease to exist. And that is the insanity that we're dealing with. And it's fueled by the media and the Democrats for political purposes. There was a major outage on X yesterday, with Elon Musk saying that it was due to a massive cyber attack that went on throughout the morning and the afternoon. He explained, "We get attacked every day, but this was done with a lot of resources. Either a large coordinated group and or a country is involved." He went on to say they were tracing the attack. He later appeared on Fox Business with Larry Kudlow, where, of course, he was asked about the cyber attack and whether it was foreign-sourced, and he said, quote, "Well, we're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area." Now, of course, that could be done in order to make it look like it was Ukraine. Could be Russians, could be North Koreans, could be the Chinese, could be any number of different nefarious actors that are trying to make it look as if it was Ukraine, to further fracture the relationship between Ukraine and the United States, which Zelensky has tried to repair. Evidently, he sent a "I'm really, 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 really sorry" letter to the White House for President Trump. And so, that's the latest development there. There is an organization called Dark Storm Team that is an anti-Semitic organization, hacker group, that has claimed they are the ones responsible for the attacks. But, again, you can't really go by what people say. You can't go by IP addresses, because you're going to often, in addition to having a potential setup scenario, you're going to have these groups that don't necessarily have the capabilities to carry something out like that, or they're like, "Man, I wish we had done that. Wish we had thought of it. Yeah, that was us," and try to get a little bit of recognition for it. So at this point, however, it does appear, according to Musk, it was massive, and something that was quite disruptive. But he seems to suggest that they will be able to eventually get to the source of the matter. At the same time, and this is pretty significant, and just, I'm telling you, watching the Democrats self-destruct. We saw the massive anti-Semitic protest on college campuses in the lead up to the election. And we watched the universities, same universities that they literally had policies in place that if you fat shamed someone, you could get kicked off campus. But if you called for the elimination of Jews and finishing what Hitler started, that did not violate their community standards. This is how sick and twisted and anti-Semitic the left has become in this country. And, there are laws that cover behavior of people who aren't even American citizens. If you're here on a visa and you're like out there promoting and supporting terrorists and terrorism and terrorist organizations, then you are to be deported. And so Trump, once he became president, was like, we're going to start doing this. And the first individual to be subject of this is Mahmoud Khalil. He's an anti-Semitic agitator who has been responsible for, originating and getting some of these anti-Semitic protests going. Guess who's coming out in defense of him? Democrats, elected Democrats. They are coming out, and it's because Trump is against them. This is how they view it. Trump is against the anti-Semite calling for the elimination of Jews. So we're going to be on this guy's side. It is a level of insanity that still, on any given day, it really does surprise me. If you had said that, okay, now here's what they're going to do. They're going to come out specifically for this guy, and they are going to defend him from being deported out of this country and instead defend his right to call for the end of Jewish people to finish what Hitler started. I would have said, well, they won't go that far. Well, color me corrected. Traffic in a moment, details on that. And again, Congressman Burleson will join us. Oh, also in the 7 o'clock hour, Dr. M, as we continue our series in the lead up to the school board elections, of course. So many throughout the area, but Springfield being the largest school district in the state of Missouri. We always, in the weeks leading up to the election, just really get a focus on what's going on there. And that's what she will continue to help us to do in the 7 o'clock hour this morning. Now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 79. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 50. For your Wednesday, partly cloudy with a high around 79. And on Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 80.
An Obama-appointed federal judge has blocked the deportation of the Columbia student Mahmoud Khalil after ICE detention and green card revocation. This is Jesse Furman, and the foreign national, which was labeled by the White House as a pro-Hamas student, was set to be removed from the United States until Furman's activist ruling threw a wrench in the gears of justice. Saturday, Trump's ICE agents arrested the activist, a Palestinian-born activist who has led the anti-Semitic protest at Columbia and Bernard College. Rubio, Secretary of State, said on X, "We will be revoking the visas and or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so that they can be deported." And this is allowed by law. When you are here as a guest and not a U.S. citizen, that allows the United States to do certain things, such as revoke your visa, which is a privilege if, you call for the elimination of Jews. Now, this is something that Democrats see as vital to the health of our university system, and that is allowing for such anti-Semitism, which is why they are protesting this. Not the blocking of the deportation, but the fact that he was going to be deported in the first place. On March 9th, 2025, in support of President Trump's executive order prohibiting anti-Semitism and in coordination with the Department of State, U.S. Immigration, and Customs Enforcement, arrested Mahmoud Khalil, a former Columbia University graduate, McLaughlin wrote in a statement to Columbian Spectator. Khalil led activities aligned to Hamas, which is a designated terrorist organization. ICE and the Department of State are committed to enforcing President Trump's executive orders and to protecting U.S. national security. This is really weird, once again, for Hitler. How long have we been told that Trump is Hitler, Trump is anti-Semitic, yet he is the one that is having to try and roll back the successes of the Democrat Party expanding anti-Semitism on the U.S. campuses? I mean, how much more clear can this be? How much more clear does it need to be before some people wake up and recognize which of the two political parties feeds into anti-Semitism and which of the two political parties is the one that's doing everything they can to eliminate it? Daily Wire writing that Democrats are rallying behind Mahmoud Khalil after he was detained by President Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security, claiming that doing so was fascist and authoritarian. Secretary of State Marco Rubio again announcing the administration's plan to strip visas or green cards from anyone participating in activities aligned with the terrorist organization Hamas. The Senate Judiciary Democrats responded from their official X account saying ICE just detained a lawful permanent resident and recent grad student in the middle of the night because Mahmoud exercised his First Amendment rights in a way Donald Trump didn't like, straight up authoritarianism. Offering aid and support to a terrorist organization is not a right that somebody has when they come here to the United States and they are allowed the privilege of studying in a university under a student visa. Now, that may be the way the Democrats want it, and that clearly is the way that they are operating here. That we should be importing individuals that are helping aid terrorist organizations. Oh, September 11th, 2001, never forget. Senate Judiciary Committee ranking member Dick Durbin, Democrat, Illinois, delivered a similar message from his personal account. Quote, detaining a recent grad student for exercising his right to free speech is something we'd expect from Russia, not America. Punishing speech by revoking legal immigration status is dangerous. Are they also allowed to just kill Jews? I mean, they're allowed to promote, offer aid and comfort in the minds of the Democrats to terrorist organizations who are calling for the elimination of Jews. I mean, are we going to call killing them freedom of speech as well? Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat, Michigan, called for Khalil to be freed, doubling down on previous statements and blaming the Jews for the fact that he and others were protesting in the first place. Quote, free Mahmoud Khalil. This is straight out of the fascist playbook. Criminalizing dissent is an assault on our First Amendment and freedom of speech. Revoking someone's green card for expressing their political opinion is illegal. Protesting genocide is not a crime. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joined in, taking a similar tone. Quote, if the federal government can disappear a legal U.S. permanent resident without reason or warrant, they can disappear U.S. citizens too. Anyone, left, right, or center, who has highlighted the importance of constitutional rights, free speech should be sounding the alarm now. Now, these are people who have openly supported putting Americans in jail who pray outside abortion clinics, who have supported Homeland Security or the Department of Justice treating parents who show up at school board meetings as potential domestic terrorists. This is the political party that has supported rounding up Americans all over this country, some of who are just outside the Capitol on January 6th and didn't even know any sort of riot was going on. So all of that is perfectly not just fine, but required of our government to round up people that fall under those categories for expressing their freedom of speech. But if you are a non-citizen who is in the United States working on behalf of Hamas, a terrorist organization, and calling for the elimination of Jews, that is something that Democrats will stand for. This is where their morality lies. I'm telling you, this political party manages to outdo itself. I laugh. You see this going on, and then some of these same people, not all of them, but some will then go on these Sunday morning talk shows and talk about how, yes, we just really need to get back to making sure that the American people don't think that we're radical. And there are sure some of these left-wing organizations that focus on particular issues that paint the Democrat Party unfairly as being out of tune with the average American and radical. And then they go out and they do this. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, your home buying needs, your home selling needs. She's it. There have been, of course, an influx of people from a number of different states, a lot of political refugees from California that, head to Florida, head to Texas. Some of them stop and decide to stay here in Missouri, like a number of other states. And they have friends in the area, and, of course, they reach out to them, who's a good realtor, and a number of them have recommended Emily Johnson. And you read the feedback that they give on how it was that, it can be stressful already just to try to find a new home when you live in the same town or a neighboring town, but a state way on the other side of the country. That's particularly a difficult thing to do. But with Emily Johnson, she makes it happen. And she makes it happen with as much ease as is humanly possible. That's what you get. Whether it's buying or selling a home, whether it's across the street or across the country, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. So the first pro-terrorist, anti-Semite agitator on university campus was detained having deportation ready to go under orders from the Trump administration. Trump saying, as long as I'm president, anti-Semitism, active anti-Semitism in a fashion of coordinating with terrorist organizations is not going to happen in this country. If you're not an American citizen and we have the legal authority to revoke your visa, your green card, then we're going to do it. Democrats are hopping mad about this, coming to the defense of the promoter of terrorism. At the same time, the Trump administration is investigating 60 universities over anti-Semitic discrimination and harassment. Again, Trump is just the absolute worst Hitler ever. Trump's Department of Education announcing Monday that 60 universities currently under investigation for anti-Semitic discrimination and harassment. The department is deeply disappointed, according to Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, that Jewish students studying on elite U.S. campuses continue to fear for their safety amid the relentless anti-Semitic eruptions that have severely disrupted campus life for more than a year. University leaders must do better. U.S. colleges and universities benefit from enormous public investments funded by U.S. taxpayers. That support is a privilege, and it is contingent on scrupulous adherence to federal anti-discrimination laws. The U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights sent letters to the 60 higher education institutions yesterday afternoon, warning that they could face legal repercussions, quote, if they do not fulfill their obligation under Title IX of the Civil Rights Act to protect Jewish students on campuses, including uninterrupted access to campus facilities and educational opportunities. The letters were sent to universities currently under investigation for allegations of anti-Semitic harassment and discrimination stemming from anti-Israeli campus protests nationwide following the October 7th, 2023 Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel. The universities in question are in every major region of the country and include elite institutions like Ivy League schools as well as major state schools like the University of Michigan and University of Virginia. The upside of elected Democrats defending the anti-Semitism, specifically the first of these Hamas promoters having their visa revoked, is that there are going to be a lot of people who did not realize much of this was going on to the extent it was until they see these postings on social media by the Democrats. So you know about the level of anti-Semitism on the university campuses and the sympathies within the Democrat Party for anti-Semites. You know it because you get your news and your information from outside this tiny little bubble, so you're aware of what goes on in the world. But people who rely on the major news networks, who rely on MSNBC, CNN, people who follow elected Democrats on X, they don't know this stuff is going on. So the upside of the Democrats tweeting out or messaging out on X, posting defense of anti-Semitism, is there's going to be a lot of people who didn't realize it, who have been supporters of the Democrat Party, because they didn't understand this was going on, that are, for the first time, potentially going to see, no, wait a minute here. What? They're defending this guy? This guy's not even a U.S. citizen? Claiming that it is fascist to not import anti-Semites to come into this country and spread the messaging of a terrorist organization? Of course, the downside is that one of the two major political parties is supporting terrorism, giving aid and comfort to terrorist organizations by defending their messengers. But I think they are going to, once again, dig their hole even deeper politically and inform a portion of the population that isn't aware that this is going on and how extreme they are. They're going to be exposing themselves with this sort of behavior. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 79. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 50. For your Wednesday, partly cloudy with a high near 79. And on Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 80.
All right, let's see. Coming up Friday, of course, we do have our Friday Road Show, which is sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air, and that is at Scramblers. If you've not joined us for that, come out and have yourself some breakfast or lunch for breakfast if you'd like to. That is at Scramblers. Also Friday, we have a local for less deal, half price $50 certificates to Springfield Little Theater, and you get those for $25. You can use that certificate to purchase tickets for Exit Laughing, which will be at the Landers Theater March 14th through the 23rd. All the details at KSGF.com. Let's see. There's this story. This is just one of those that it drives me just a little bit crazy. And I brought it up before, but the problem is spreading. The headline, Fox News, Freedom Caucus member Anna Paulina Luna joins AOC to push 10% credit card interest rate cap. This is something that has a Senate version in which Missouri's Josh Hawley has teamed up with Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm all for working together when it comes to the common good, But how often does Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders reach across the aisle for something that is a cause in line with Republican values or liberty-minded values or freedom values? Can you think of any time? When this is brought up to people like Josh Hawley or Anna Paulina Luna, they say, I'm always willing to work with people when it comes to doing the right thing. Do you think that they are willing to work with people that compromise their principles? I mean, come on. The story reads as follows. In a seemingly, and by the way, the reason I'm opposed to this is because price controls do not work. This is a price control. A price control is when government comes in. And by the way, this is the definition of fascism. When you're allowed to own your own company, your own business, but the government says, you know what, but we're going to tell you how to run it. We're going to tell you how much you can charge. We're going to tell you what products you can make. Price controls are when you tell a business, a private business, this is the most you can charge for your good or service. We are going to control the pricing. Those are price controls. You may remember Kamala Harris pitched that as her plan to deal with inflation, and rightfully so, she was railed on. So for Republicans to come along that we're told are, freedom-loving individuals, and I'm not saying that they're not, but I just don't know how they can be any more wrong than to say, well, we do support price, but our price controls are different, see, they're just different than when Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, well, except in these instances because they also want these price controls. Like, what are you thinking? I don't know why consistency is such a difficult thing for some people. Well, I'm against this. Well, except in this instance. Okay, so you're not really against it. In a seemingly peculiar bipartisan alliance, conservative House Freedom Caucus member Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Republican Florida, who incidentally, as outside of this, demonstrated herself to be awesome, and AOC teamed up to push a measure that would put price controls on credit card interest rates at 10%. The proposal stipulates the annual percentage rate applicable to an extension of credit obtained by use of a credit card may not exceed 10 percentage points inclusive of all finance charges. Responding to a post on X that labeled Luna and her left-leaning compatriot strange bedfellows, the GOP congresswoman noted, I would argue it isn't strange at all. Most people agree insane credit card interest rates are predatory. Okay, but even if that's the case, that does not mean price controls are something we should have in the United States of America. It's particularly egregious, the concept of people from Congress, the United States government, telling some private entity who deals with debt how it is to manage their business when we are $36 trillion in debt in this country. I mean, it's like, of all of the institutions in which you're going to find someone that thinks they have the right to tell a private industry how much they can charge, how much they can, enter into debt, which, by the way, is voluntary. Nobody has to take out a credit card. You and I ultimately find we don't have a choice when it comes to the amount of debt that Congress puts us in. The story notes that Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley put the proposal forward in the Senate last month. Trump floated the idea as a temporary cap on credit card interest during a campaign speech last year. Luna said, for too long, credit card companies have abused working-class Americans with absurd interest rates, trapping them in an almost insurmountable amount of debt. Well, again, so is Congress. But, of course, this is, once again, I don't know how you even have an intellectual argument with people who claim that they're against price controls until they're for price controls. Well, this is different, see, because credit card companies are taking advantage of people. Oh, so that's the new standard. When government decides a private business is charging too much or taking advantage of people, that's when government gets to take over the business and decide how much it is that they can charge. I mean, there really isn't even much depth to be had with a discussion like this. If you support price controls, you support price controls. And the hypocrisy of some of these people that railed on Kamala Harris for suggesting price controls in order to keep things, the prices from skyrocketing at the supermarket. But then turn around when it comes to credit cards, and they're using the exact same argument that Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren and, Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders use against corporations. So it should not be any surprise that Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders are teaming up with Josh Hawley and Luna on this stuff. And is there no one in the Republican Party that could pull these people aside and like, hey, maybe price controls, yeah, that's really not something we want to be associated with because, freedom. I've yet to hear, other than giving explanations that the left uses, a reason why price controls on credit cards are something that are a liberty-minded / conservative or constitutional value. Well, it's because they're bad. Oh, okay, so now we're using the left's argument for controlling business. Because they're bad. Because they take advantage. Has there ever been a corporation, a business, that the left has wanted to either just ban outright or put price controls on in which their justification wasn't that very same thing? Well, they're taking advantage of people. That's what the left always says. Whether it's at the pump, well, you got this price gouging going on. We need government to come in and start dictating the price of gas because they're taking advantage of people. Price of groceries, well, we got to have the government come in, start putting price controls on things because, they're taking advantage of people. That was the crux of the Biden campaign argument when it came to grocery stores, that they were all collaborating to take advantage of people during this time. So excuse me for not falling in line when a couple of people who are Republicans use the exact same rationale to go after credit card companies. So this, by the way, is where Republican voters have to step up. This is part of the problem. Republican voters get very frustrated because they have dealt with, we've got the massive debt, and we've got, the deficit year after year after year, and, increased spending and government expanding, and it's all because Republicans do it. We get so mad at these rhinos. But let's just be honest when it comes to Josh Hawley, because Josh Hawley is very good at certain things, particularly when it comes to being in front of the camera and grilling people. He is a 100% asset to not just the state of Missouri and the U.S. Senate, but the country when it comes to really nailing some of these people that come before his committees to testify. But because of that, seemingly, Republicans don't want to criticize, don't want to call his office up and say, hey, price controls, no. I mean, agree with you on a lot of stuff, but I got to let you know, don't agree with you on this. And the Republican Party doesn't stand up and say, no, this is not anything that we support. Any more than abortion or taking away your rights that are protected under the Second Amendment. This is where it is the fault of the Republican voter. And it's when, little by little, the slippery slope of the good Republicans going way off track, and then the Republican voters not saying, well, just so you know, this is where the guardrail is. This is not why we elected you. And so they feel like it's okay. And then they do it. Well, and then we do it again. And we do it some more. And before you know it, you have a tax and spend Republican Party. Or a price control. Republican Party that teams up with Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line message. 10% credit card cap will force credit card companies to cancel high-risk cards and force those borrowers to go to payday loan companies paying 400% interest. Well, then they'll go after them, and then they'll go after them until there's none left. Our representatives learned nothing from the Dodd-Frank bill. Well, aside from, this is a good point here, aside from the fact that price controls don't work. I mean, these are some of the implications as to why it is that they don't work. Let's go to Dewey. Dewey, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Nick, about Josh Hawley.
Yes.
Of course, I vote for him over Democrats, but I've never trusted the guy. You remember when he ran for Attorney General and he campaigned and he railed on these politicians who would get elected to one office and immediately use it to move on to the next office? And that's exactly what he did for the Attorney General. I've never trusted the guy. He's a snake.
Yeah.
He's better than a Democrat, but, you know.
Whether that was his intent or not, that is what eventually happened. And I'm going to make an argument here for some people. I don't know if they'll like it or not, but it's just a thought. Dewey, thanks for the call. Good to hear from you. Oh, hey, you weren't at happy hour.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't feel good.
Okay. Well, I hope you're feeling better, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. I recall the accusations when Josh Hawley was running that he was just going to use it to get to a higher office, and then that's what happened. And so you had a lot of people on the left say, well, I told you so. Now, some could argue, well, circumstances changed. But, you know, some would argue, but when you tell somebody, hey, I won't do this, part of the reason you tell them that is so they know even if circumstances change, you won't do it. That's part of what the word meant once upon a time. It's like, to some degree, I mean, it's different because you're talking about corruption, but Joe Biden pardoning Hunter, and, well, you said you wouldn't. He's like, well, circumstances changed. Trump got elected president. Well, yeah. You know, this isn't Holly good, Holly bad. We have to get out of this mode, particularly as Republicans, of deciding we like someone, and so, not then giving them feedback when they go off the rails, when they support something that is clearly out of line with what we're told are Republican principles. And this is different than when people say, well, Democrats, Republicans never stick together, Democrats do. I think that when it comes to rallying around somebody who is being unfairly attacked, yes, Democrats do a better job than Republicans do. For example, you think about just the onslaught of criticisms in the past of Trump and Republicans scattering, refusing to circle the wagons on a congressional level. Those of you remember that Todd Aiken, it was a similar thing. I mean, Republicans cannot wait to throw over the rails a Republican if they're accused of doing something scandalous. But when it comes to a Republican that is pushing legislation that is the antithesis of freedom and what the Republican Party claims it stands for, we shouldn't then be like, well, we need to rally around him because he's a Republican. No. No. It's incumbent upon us to let them know, I do not support this. It is a price control. And what generally, this is how the left operates, and I'm not saying this is how Josh Hawley would operate in this fashion, but whenever, let's say, the left wants to use government to put price controls in place, and then you say, I don't believe in price controls, they tell you how bad the business is. They start telling you that as if that is the argument. Because they know that if they tell you how bad the business is, well, you agree, right? Well, yeah, I do agree. I guess I do. And so they sort of coax you into the van. And then once that door slides and closes, it's too late. When it comes to the idea of price controls, I don't care how bad the business is. I mean, obviously, they can't, murder for hire or anything, but if you have two parties, when it comes to any sort of arrangement for goods or services, and it's not drugs, it's something legal like money, they should be able to enter into any agreement they want, whatever it is. Neither of the party has to. Oh, but they have no other choice. Yes, people always have a choice. We cannot get into this trap of people in government, even if they have an R next to their name, coaxing us into thinking that government should start controlling businesses and prices if they convince you that the business is bad and taking advantage of people. Because, all right, well, let's just line up every business that exists and let's just start judging them. And who gets to make that judgment call? Oh, I guess politicians. Oh, and a lot of times, guess what? The companies that pay, then you got, look, all the donations at this company. Oh, isn't it a coincidence that usually the businesses that aren't considered bad are the ones that make massive donations to these different corporate? I mean, look at FISA and, the big pharma with Democrats and all of a sudden being huge defenders of these multinational corporations. Lo and behold, look, the businesses that they actually support are the ones that write them millions of dollars in checks. It's a bad business to be in. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. Coming up Friday, of course, we will have our Friday Road Show at Scramblers, sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air. Also at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, a local for Les Ozarks. And that will be a $50 gift certificate to Springfield Little Theater that it'll only cost you $25. So $25 gets you $50 gift certificate, and then that gets you the ability, you can use that in order to purchase tickets for the Exit Laughing at the Landers Theater, which is from March 14th through 23rd. Before we get to Dr. M this morning, I want to read a text message because this is just such an incredible point. And I was talking in the last hour about these continued efforts of Republicans teaming up with Democrats in the Senate, and this specifically Missouri, Josh Hawley teaming up with Bernie Sanders in order to use price controls over credit card companies because credit card companies are bad and take advantage of people. And somebody who's a leftist had texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line, eating your own LMAO. Well, you know what having independent thought does for you, the benefit of it, is when you are a political party or you're a constituent that generally votes for a political party and you are willing to question some of the things that your elected leaders do, you don't end up with a dementia patient as a candidate. You don't end up as a member of a political party that overthrows your election and doesn't even allow the delegates at a convention to pick a new one, instead the donors doing so, handing you somebody like Kamala Harris. It is beneficial to question as voters whether or not the party is on the right track. And I would argue that part of the reason that the Democrat Party is in such a dumpster fire right now is because of voters that just do what they're told. They question nothing. When they're told this is going to be your candidate, regardless of what your thoughts are, you're going to support, or hey, you're going to support pornography in elementary schools or transgender surgeries for 10-year-olds, and you say, oh, okay, we support it. That's how you end up with the party that currently is in place. So you can call it eating your own, but I call it a constructive criticism that helps keep a party in a healthier way and the party understanding where it is that the constituents are. It's a difference between a party that is telling the constituents what to do versus constituents telling the party what to do. And that's why we see such a vast difference between the two parties and their success versus failure right now. Traffic coming up in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 79. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 50. For your Wednesday, partly cloudy skies with a high near 79. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80.
It has become a tradition as we roll into the school board elections, and usually about 4 weeks or so ahead of time. Dr. M joins us to sort of refocus what is going on. Just because of the nature of things, it isn't something that every week we talk about throughout the year, and so as we get closer to making decisions, we focus on it, and there's a need to, because of it's not just misinformation, but also assumptions that get made. And it's just one of the great frustrations, and it seems like increasingly with the school boards, these people that network themselves or get networked as these conservative individuals, and people just assume that they are. It just, I don't know, it just drives me a little bit crazy. Dr. M is with us. I appreciate you coming and doing this with us every time we have these elections around the corner, and joining us again today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course, great to see you.
And as always, I speak for myself as an individual.
Yes, this is very true, and you have no trouble doing that.
Exactly. Certainly not.
I'm sure you deal with this frustration. I mean, you are in it. You see everything that's going on. You know the establishment versus those who aren't part of the here's how we always do it and the ulterior motives. And then you talk with people and they're like, well, so-and-so, this is person, I heard that they're fantastic. And you just want to pull your hair out.
Right. And I really liked what you said before we broke, which is, well, first off, local elections are very important, right? They are closest to the people and most effective in terms of making a difference in your day-to-day lives of you and your children and your community. But yes, there's a lot of information out there, and I did promise some stories.
Yes.
And, I'm going to lead with one story because I think it's important to understand this idea that, we have people that are pillars of the community, right? Especially ex-school board members, very
Right.
respected as they should be. They gave of their time and to make our schools better. But, sometimes they reflect a bygone era, and they're just sort of clinging on to that, right? And they're not bad people, but for whatever reasons, whether they're unwilling to face where we are as a result of perhaps some of their decisions, right? Because that's very uncomfortable, or because they really don't know any better, and if we just keep saying it's great, it must be great, right? As we course correct. So there is some understanding, and I'd like to tell some of those stories and some of those private conversations that have been had.
Well, and I will say we are pretty self-destructive in the sense that if you were to ask people on average, do you think that education is headed in the right direction? I think most people would say, no, it's not. But then somebody comes along that's been part of the system for 40 years, and they're like, well, I'm going to support that person because they've been like, no, okay, wait a minute.
Yes.
How do you expect a different outcome so we're self-destructive in that way? But it is important. You mentioned different stories.
And what I ask of the listenership is these stories are not for you to just hear, because in a way I feel like I might be preaching to the choir, right? There's some lessons to be learned from these incidences that I'm going to share, but it's really, I feel like, your duty to then share it with those around you and make sure that you encourage people to vote. It cannot be emphasized enough. So I'm sure we'll hammer away at that throughout the hour.
And not just people who have kids in the
Yes.
school system or kids at all. I see it all the time, and I know you do as well. Even on social media, people will complain about the inability of younger people to communicate, to count change, to do these
Hold
things
a job,
yeah,
show up on time, work the full shift,
and
not expect a break every couple hours.
But then they don't vote in school board elections because, well, I don't have kids in school. Okay, well, but still, guess what? Those kids are going to be tending to you when you're in that assisted living facility.
Exactly. And it reflects, it comes right back to the safety in your community, right? When you have lower education, you end up usually with more poverty, and more poverty breeds more crime. I'm not saying that poor people commit crime, but that's usually the trend that happens, not because of the poor people, but because of the environment and the sorts of people that tend to go into those communities. So, and then it drives down your property value. And the other side of the coin is, when you go to the grocery store and you buy a loaf of bread, you sure pick that loaf of bread, don't you? Because you're paying for it. You get to choose. Well, most of your money, your property taxes, 85%, are going to your local schools. On top of that, Medicare is the health care, because there's Medicare and Medicaid, is the number one expense, so really Medicaid, I guess, for the state. The number two expense are the public schools. Yeah. So your income tax dollars are going there too. Well, how do you not want to have a say, right? Okay. Let me start off with my experience as a candidate.
Which, so people know,
I'm not a candidate this year, but last year I was, and I was running for my second term. And, life had gotten busier, and I served on Springfield School Board and a different board, and, just busy, and I wanted some assistance. And I thought, everybody seems to be hiring this consulting firm. It's called Victory Enterprises. They're they're not like a mom and pop shop. They are a national firm, but they tend to do more of the smaller scale elections. Okay. So they feed off of the off-year elections. So they're not doing statewide races. They're doing mayoral, city council, school board. At least that's my impression. And I thought, well, let me try this. And I called, and I had two interesting questions. One was, well, are you a Republican? We only work for Republicans. And I thought, well, that's odd. They've run a lot of elections in the city of Springfield for people that are definitely not Republican. Yeah. And I thought, well, yeah, so I do happen to be a Republican. And the next question was, well, what's your relationship like with the chamber? I thought, okay, well, I don't have anything against them. I don't really have much of a relationship. I was in the healthcare industry, and I don't know. And they're like, well, we're going to have to check on that. We'll get back with you. And I guess I sort of lucked out. At the time I thought I did. And in retrospect, what a bad move. The person that I was dealing with was somebody, he was the director so they have regional directors. He had taken a hiatus for a couple of years for medical reasons. So he'd sort of been out of the loop, and all of this school board stuff had really gotten hot in the last couple of years, right? The various camps and whatnot. And so he comes back, it takes him several days, and says, I made a call to the chamber, and they said they didn't have anything against you. So, and I thought, well, that's good, because, we're wondering there for a little bit.
But you're learning who's calling the shots here.
Yeah, exactly. So that's first cue, but there's another person who's calling the shots, or a group of individuals. And I said, yeah, sure. And so here we go. We start the relationship. And of course, the very next question is, well, how much money are you going to raise? And they want big dollars. This is the constituent class that really runs cities, right? This is on a smaller scale, but nevertheless. And the relationship started. And as part of the contract, on the advice of a friend, I wanted exclusivity. Even though there were other candidates that were like-minded, like Landon McCarter and Chad Rollins, I did want them to work exclusively with me.
And it's just, in a nutshell, this Victory Enterprises. So they essentially act as sort of running the campaign
manager, right? Okay. They do,
so people understand what we're talking about.
They do your logo, they do your signs, your social media, your mailers, everything. It's a one-stop shop. And your TV commercials, should you choose to have TV commercials. So at the time I signed up, and the relationship moved forward, and I was about $20,000 into it, and there were some things that made me uncomfortable. There was something that just, sometimes you have this gut feeling, like things aren't really going. I'm not going to go out and just say they were sabotaging my campaign, but it just didn't feel right. And we had a difficult vote. We voted on the superintendent's contract. It was sometime towards the end of January. And that's what your campaign manager or your consultant is for, is to do what I would call some damage control, right? There was going to be some issues. People were going to raise some questions. And so that's, I was a seasoned candidate. I'd run before on my own. I'd done the whole thing. And so I reached out to them, and they didn't call me back. And then it was like day 2, and they didn't call me back. And so I was
you are paying these people.
I am paying these people. They finally called me back, and they said, well, we didn't really know how to tell you this. We've been struggling with this. And so, and I'm just now going to have to read the email that came the next day. And it was essentially going over a discussion that was had over the phone, which they will unfortunately now have to withdraw their involvement from my campaign and terminate the engagement. And the reason they cited was that they were no longer comfortable with managing my campaign because they felt that I was going to win and they couldn't be a part of that. I mean, imagine your campaign
Isn't that the
consultant
point?
exactly telling you, we really think you're going to win this thing, and we can't be there at the end. We can't be there at the winning when you do. And they cited a conflict of interest that would compromise the equality campaign management, because they said, and I'm reading this from an email, that a successful bid would not align with the many established relationships in Springfield
That they had?
that they had. And I wasn't going to let them get off that easy.
Right.
I wanted at least one name, right? And he said that they had been in contact with these established relationships on a weekly basis, and that it was difficult for them to finally share this with me. I wonder, had I not asked, how long this would have gone on. And I wanted to know, at least give me one name. And I really thought it was going to be a chamber name, right? But then I'd cleared the chamber, and it was Alina Leonard,
Which is?
the past president of the school board. And we know that these ex-school board members have been recruiting and running campaigns. It's very evident if you're on the inside, because there's a lot of text and email sharing. And so Alina Leonard's husband, interestingly now, is the treasurer for Sarah Huff, right? This is all one very happy family. So Alina Leonard, and so that was, that wasn't nice. That wasn't good for me, right? It was an interesting time because I suddenly had to pick up the pieces and run my own campaign. And I did, and I was successful. Thank you for everyone who voted.
Can I ask a question? And
the story gets better.
Well, this just doesn't seem legal to me.
You would think.
Here, you are paying them, yet they are apparently making decisions from some outside person or entity about how it is to service you as a customer. That just seems.
And furthermore, I made sure that they understood that, and so this does happen. So I looked into this, and this has happened to other individuals. But when something like this happens, and I spoke with attorneys that are extremely knowledgeable, knowledgeable enough to be in the White House right now, right? So very, very well informed. They said, well, yeah, this is really, really unfortunate. But typically when this happens, they remove themselves from the races. So when they can no longer provide, if they feel that their management of your campaign is compromised, it's probably the right thing to do. They probably should disengage because you're not going to be happy with what you get.
Right.
Their heart's not in it. But then they typically are not in that race, so they don't support anybody.
Right.
Plus, you did have a contract. Well, lo and behold, we find out, it's revealed after the election through the Missouri Ethics Commission reporting that then they went and worked for quote-unquote opposition, and they dropped all those ads. They produced the ads, and they made the ad buys for the three individuals, two of which sit on the board right now, Danielle Kincaid and Susan Provence. And what's more fascinating is that the contract went through United Springfield.
Oh, jeez.
Who
the completely non-partisan.
who
Everybody
serves-
needs to come together. And
Everybody comes. And United Springfield, the person who ran the show, and I know this because when I went for my interview, the person who checked you in and put you in the little room and said, okay, you're up next, was Alina Leonard. Offered you, would you like a drink? So Alina Leonard, who for most people, you don't realize that she's on that board and works with them. But when you go look at the MEC reports, United Springfield paid Alina Leonard for her services because she also, here it is, also has a consulting firm, right?
Just what a dirty mess.
Uh-huh.
Well, so it at the very least seems completely unethical to me that if you are an entity and you get hired by someone to help run their campaign, so you're obviously going to know, like, to some degree, or you're going to be privy to strategy and approach, and then you turn around and decide to then work for the opposition.
Right. Funny thing, you should bring that up. So the campaign mantra. So I spoke with them a lot, right? I said, this is the winning message. The winning message this election cycle is going to be safety. this is what our commercial is going to be. This is how we're going to lead into it. This is, winning message number 2, number 3. And they executed that flawlessly for the other candidates.
Jeez.
Ain't that something?
I mean, if I were running, I guess this would be the first question I would ask before I hired any organization to manage my campaign. Have you ever mid-campaign switched sides, allowing the opposition to know what the strategy of the, because why would anybody hire any organization that would do that?
Yeah, well,
because they could at any time sabotage
If you're a Republican there listening, I would not hire Victory Enterprises because they're going to go, where they think more money is, because now they just went from 1 client to 3 plus a pack, right? They cashed in. And 2, because they have no morals and ethics. So Alina Leonard's husband ended up being in those commercials. And they don't
really even try
people.
to hide it, right?
Yeah, but, or they don't even have enough people that they can trust to bring in to.
Oh, okay.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what. Yeah,
and
that's true.
also because they really think the average voter is dumb. I mean, this is what they think about you.
Well, in the average voter, they have no idea about
they
this
have
stuff.
No
they
idea.
have no clue. I suspect that outside of this conversation, it's never really been aired in a public forum, like media-wise, to the degree that it is, and it can be confusing. You listen to this stuff, and you're like, this all sounds, this person and that person, but it's like I feel like Glenn Beck with a big whiteboard drawing.
And Alina
all these...
Leonard, and all these people claim to be Republican.
Yeah.
So I am. So as the RNC committee woman, let me tell you about this.
Well, here
idea
let's go ahead. Quick break, traffic, and then we'll get some weather from Sarah, and then we'll get into that part of it with Dr. M this morning. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 79. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 50. For your Wednesday, partly cloudy skies with a high near 79. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80.
Dr. M joins us as we get closer and closer to the school board elections. And just to briefly recap, people tend to oftentimes think that, hey, when it comes to these school boards, these candidates are just, interested, parents in the community or, just civic duty-minded individuals that decide, I want to run. And in fact, what we find is that there's this machinery, and this is not uncommon. I mean, this happens all over the place. And your experience last time you ran hiring this campaign management organization that said, well, we have to call the chamber first to see if you're okay, and then said
to
okay,
run for school board.
To run for school board, right?
So this isn't to run for mayor.
Right. Yeah. And which just seems sort of weird anyhow, like who's in charge of these folks, but nonetheless. And then agreed to, but then part of the way through decided to dump you and then go to the people you were running against who coincidentally ended up running on your campaign messages. Is that an accurate portrayal of things?
Precisely.
So it's important
and
for people.
And all of it orchestrated through ex-school board members. Right.
Okay, now you had mentioned before we went to the traffic as a Republican National Committee person, your recognition of what's going on with these people, and they all get presented as these good conservative Republicans.
Right. So there is. Let me first lead by saying that Dr. Leonard, because she is a PhD.
And this is the former school board president that was
two-term? Yes, she was former school board vice president and former school board president. I believe she was president for 2 years, and she is a very nice person. She is lovely. But at the end of the day, you don't want nice for your school board. You want members. You want capable, just like you don't want a nice surgeon, right? You want a capable surgeon.
It's nice if they happen to be nice.
Yes, it's
but
nice
that's not the leading.
Yes, it's nice if the electrician is nice.
Yeah.
But you really want the guy who's capable, and
right.
your house won't, set on fire because of electrical issues. So, and it is about the machine, and the machine depends on money, right? There is that element of contracts and the flow of contracts, and I know that everybody knows this, but the issue is you have to look at what. So here we have this Republican, right, and self-proclaimed in private conversations. I would say that they are Trump voters, but these are the same. Dr. Leonard was the same person who, under her leadership, started the DEI. It was called Equity and Diversity Division in Springfield Public Schools that was funded to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, that did the teacher trainings that were just awful, that
I
resulted
think that's some of what we covered.
in a federal lawsuit that now, did you know that it's cost us $650,000? And the Sunshine Law, the Sunshine request that Attorney General Eric Schmidt, now Senator Schmidt, and then picked up by Attorney General Bailey, that cost us $90,000. So that's come to a conclusion. So this is the person. So you have to think, it's not so much about your worldview, it's where's the backbone, and where do your interests really lie? Is it with your own consulting company? Because then she left the board and she went on to be a member of the City Utilities Board. Right? They do the board circuit. They all sit on each other's boards.
It's so true.
All of them. And I won't mention too many names. Just go look it up. It's the same people.
Or like
sitting on each
MSU
other's
board,
boards. Yep.
You get city utilities, you get chamber. It's just this constant rotation.
Constant rotation. And they make sure that the schools are a part of it. So our superintendent sits on the chamber board. And I actually asked the chamber president, do you think that's a conflict of interest? And they said, absolutely not. But what's fascinating is we're not free members. We should be. We pay the chamber tens of thousands of dollars. And we buy tables at their events. And we rent facilities from, we have all these beautiful facilities.
You say we, the school board. So the taxpayers.
The taxpayers, right. We, the taxpayers, we are building amazing new buildings, yet we are still renting from, it's always chamber members, interestingly, the businesses and the venues. Right. Follow the money for the various events that we are having. Okay, I digress. Let's get back to the subject at hand. So Alina Leonard, who now, why are they doing this? Part of it, I think, is pride. Pride, and this is what we built, and it's all great. But they're also, on some little part, do recognize, because the numbers are there, right? I mean, they do get the one time a year presentation on where the numbers were. And under her leadership and her tenure, for the 6 years that she served on the board, it was a progressive decline. There's another leader, and it was Dr. Frederick. And she is a lovely older lady as well. She was the vice president when I first got on the board. Then she went on to become the president. And I served with her as VP for a time. And we can talk about that on a different day. But she told me something really interesting once. And none of these conversations are privileged, right? When board members speak with each other, when there's more than 3 of us, we do not discuss business unless it's for a social event. Mm-hmm. All our conversations are had in public, but we do have private conversations one-on-one. And unless it's regarding something that is closed as a result of executive privilege, I'm free to speak about it. And so she was really excited. When I came on, it was Dr. Lathan. She's our superintendent. It was her first year. And she was very hopeful. And, she has this skill and that skill, and I just can't wait to see what goes on and what happens in the improvement. And she relayed to me, this is her 3rd superintendent. Yeah. And she had served, I want to say, was it 12 years or 15 years? So this is her 3rd superintendent. And very genuine lady, lovely lady. But, also a Republican, also a Trumper, just drinking the Kool-Aid, right? But she was an ex-educator, a fantastic teacher. I mean, award-winning science teacher. So many people are doctors and dentists as a result of her having taught them and led them in science courses. She said to me, with every superintendent, there's hope. So what you have to do, we got the second one. I didn't turn out. And so now we got another chance. And I just keep, each one of them, they come along with these ideas. The second one came out, Jungmann came out with the idea of, we're going to give every kid a Chromebook, and this is the next new thing, and all this stuff. And what was so disconcerting about what she told me was the way she told the story is, you're just going to have to wait it out. You're just going to have to. I've waited all those years to finally get another superintendent. And she wanted me to sit down and shut up because, Miriam, these are the heydays. We finally got a new person. Let's give him a chance, right? Not that I wasn't going to give Dr. Lathan a chance. But what was fascinating was, how did you sit there and wait? So I said, well, when did you know that Jungmann wasn't going to work out? They're not dumb people, right? She's also a PhD, right? Well, 2 or 3 years into it, they see the writing on the wall. Yeah. But then they go along and they wait. Well, and then this is the other thing they tell you. Well, the average, tenure of a superintendent is 3 to 5 years. The max they go is for 7. You always have another opportunity. And so you want to stick around. And if you stick around, you come back, you'll have an opportunity to pick the next one. It's like they're already looking at the next one instead of exercising what is their duty of governance, which is to govern. You would never do that with your nanny. If you got a nanny and within the first couple months you think, okay, this isn't going to work out, are you going to stick around? Because, and here's another point I got to make, these aren't their kids. And I think it is noteworthy that neither Denise Frederick nor Alina Leonard or the current school board president, who's been our president for 2 years, have ever born children. Yeah, they may have married somebody who had adult children or teenage children.
Well, I was going to ask, when you talk about when you hired that managing agency, and they're like, well, we got to check with the chamber of these cars. Do any of these organizations that essentially seem to be part of the machinery, is that something that they seem to even care about, whether or not these people they support have kids? Do they ask that? Is that? And I'm not saying that every person has to have kids, but that certainly is an element of a person's background and resume
right.
for this position, and it just
No,
seems to be irrelevant.
Are you Republican? Does the chamber support you? Which is fascinating.
Not do you have kids in the school district?
Because the chamber's not. No, because they care about money, and they don't want the money train. They don't want that gravy train to end.
So none of these school board presidents that you've talked about have had kids of their own.
No, why are they so interested in A, being on the school board, and B, taking a leadership role? And you see those in their decisions. For example, the lack of discipline, right? If a child is misbehaving, we have to give them more things.
Yeah, I know. Reward the bad behavior.
Reward the bad behavior. And I have to say, before I had kids, I might have subscribed to that school of thought. Oh, hey, maybe if I, if you stop crying, I'll get you an ice cream. I would do that with cousins because I thought,
sure,
I'll give them.
And they learned how to get ice cream.
That's right. And then you have children and you think, okay, this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. And you're going to have to learn what is good for children. And again, I always come back to this. It's not about what children want. It's about what children need. Yeah. And I do think coming into that with the worldview that you have as a school board member, again, note, I'm not saying your politics, but it is your worldview. It's the code of ethics. And I think we talked about some worldview and ethical issues.
Let's get a traffic update here and more with Dr. M coming up. Incidentally, and I know we've mentioned this, but if you go to the podcast section or on-demand section, which is it listed? Is it on-demand or podcast? I forget.
Podcast.
Podcast section, Sarah's show, you can hear interviews that aired a couple of Saturdays ago on Sarah's show, and that is something that they can listen to, right?
That is correct. And then we do also have sample ballots up at ksgf.com.
All right, more with Dr. M in moments. Dr. M joining us. If you miss any of the discussion thus far, you can listen to it in the podcast section at ksgf.com. As I mentioned earlier, also Sarah, a couple weeks ago on her show, which airs Saturday mornings, 10 a.m., she interviewed the 4 candidates for Springfield School Board as well, and Dr. M joining. And you'll be back one day next week.
Monday.
Monday? Okay, Monday of next week. All right, very good.
I know we're hopping.
Well, no, that's good.
Days.
That's good.
And I do encourage the listeners to go and listen to those interviews for a couple reasons. One, because I want you to absolutely hear what Kelly Byrne and David Myers have to say. I think that they are excellent candidates. I certainly plan on voting for them. If you want more information about Kelly Byrne, you can find that at Kelly, Kelly, 4, the number 4, SPS.info. And David Myers is David for the number 4, greateducation.org. I encourage you to learn more about them and find ways to spread the message. So you go and listen to them, and I did. Gail Smart says something that, it's all true, but it's the perspective. So she thinks, along with Alina Leonard, who never had kids, her children go to our schools, or Denise Frederick for that matter, or the current president. But she says, well, my children went to Springfield Public Schools and they received a great education. What she doesn't tell you is how old her children are. And yes, Springfield Public Schools was fantastic. We have the exact same poverty level that we had 10, 15 years ago.
So that's not the excuse.
That's not the excuse. But we were scoring in the 60 to 70th percentile for reading and mathematics. Now, I'm not saying that those are good, because we want to be closer to 100%, but we're now below 50%. And so you think, well, you seem to be out of touch. I mean, are you even aware of what you're saying? Right. And I think this idea is, and I firmly believe this because Gail and Cliff Smart are my neighbors. This is the classic MO of liberals. They know what's good for you, and they're better than you. It's the elitist mentality.
Yeah, sure.
No, things were great. They were great for us, but we know what's good for you, right? These are all the ex-school board members. Trust us. We didn't have children, but trust us. We know what decisions to make for you because you don't know any better, and we're going to make sure you're going to be okay. Mind you, it's not their kids.
Yeah. Well,
grandkids or nieces in our schools. And at the same time that Cliff Smart, who at the time and until recently was president of MSU, was running DEI to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars and forcing it down to our public schools. And we will talk about this next Monday. Not only was he doing that, but they had a hand in our school closures and the masking of our children and all the things that we did because of COVID. And at the same time that he had masking, not just in our school, but at Missouri State University, he was having lavish parties at his home where there were so many people in attendance that some of them, and I live, 2, 4, about 6 houses, around the corner, people were parking all the way down on my street.
It's like Gavin Newsom and French Laundry.
Exactly. This is who these people are because they know better. I find that very frustrating, and I think that the voters need to know that.
Well, and everything that we've talked about from the beginning of this particular show, which has been extremely enlightening about what the people who are behind this and just the rotation of chairs of people from, one board to this organization, and if it produced positive results for children education. I may not like the personalities and the players, but you could say, well, at least they're getting things done.
The end product.
But that's the problem. It continues to decline.
And they actually believe it. So Cliff Smart, I wrote an opinion piece. Did you read about it in the Daily Citizen? He wrote,
I don't know.
This is after the president's executive order. This is after Governor Kehoe's speech. He is still, they are still digging their heels in on DEI. He wrote an article that went on and on about how DEI is wonderful and why it absolutely needs to still be present in red states. And what a great job he did.
Well, the results are just...
because Missouri State University used to have an ACT score. Now you don't even need to have an ACT score. You just need to have a certain grade point average. And let me tell you, there are students right now that I know personally who are struggling in private schools, who are struggling at Greenwood Laboratory School, who then, because they're struggling, their parents decide, that you don't want to see your kids struggle. They move them over to Springfield Public Schools, Glendale High School, for example, and suddenly their kids, they're an athlete and they like that, but they're getting straight A's and never doing homework.
Lower bar.
Yeah, lower bar.
I do want to go ahead and get quick traffic. Then we'll have a couple of minutes before the top of the hour for any final thoughts. And again, we will have Dr. M back next week as well as we head into the run-up of area elections, school board elections specifically for Springfield. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah reminded me that Kyle Wyatt, All Outlaw, his
Yes.
show, he also had some,
Yes.
or he's got some candidate interviews on
He
his.
had Kelly on Saturday, and then this upcoming Saturday, he is going to have Dave Myers on. And then, of course, you can find those interviews at ksgf.com under the All Outlaw podcast section.
Dr. M with us. Other resources people want to learn about.
Yes, other
candidates.
resources. I'd like to tell the listenership about Back on Track America, and if you can put up their link, I would really appreciate it. They are a conservative Christian PAC, unapologetically, and they were that before it was cool to be conservative, right? I think they're doing a lovely job of trying to get the message out there. And they did an interview with me and took some segments of that. And there's a commercial that they have produced. I just saw a sneak peek on their Facebook. I think it's very eye-opening, and I encourage everyone to check them out. And in order to get that message out to everyone, not just on Facebook, it'd be really nice to see that on television. I encourage the listenership to reach into their wallets and donate. If you could put the link, that would be fantastic. And maybe we can have somebody from that organization accompany us on Monday, and tell us a little bit about that.
I know we've mentioned them when Calvin. Remember when Calvin was on? We talked a bit about the organization.
Right, and there's I did. There's some clips of me describing the failure in governorship, and I want to just remind the listeners, it is not the family's fault. It's not the children's fault. The school boards have the ability to control everything. They provide the financing, they provide the leadership, so they set the goals. They say, this is our mission and vision. These are our policies. This is the path. Policies are the path to how to get things done. The superintendent and everybody she hires are the people you hire to do it. Then the budget is the money. So basically you're in charge, right? This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. This is who I hired. Therefore, the end product, which is the student's education, is entirely within the hands of the school board. So when you're looking at less than 50% accomplishments for our students, you have to look at the school board. And if you're looking at who these people are, you got to look at yourself. Yeah. These people are there because you didn't go out and participate and make sure that you voted the people that spent your money wisely, that made your kids and your neighbors' kids and get a better education, and that you have a better community, and that you have property values that are going to keep in line with what you want them to be.
Pleasure as always.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you so
I
much.
don't mean to be lecturing.
It's very insightful as always. We always get
Thank you for
positive
having me.
feedback and our view into what is going on, and then we'll talk with you next week.
I appreciate you. Yes, sir.
And I encourage you, if you miss any of it, go back, listen to it. It'll be up at ksgf.com, Spotify, iTunes, all the places that we have that available. And another hour straight ahead. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447-KSGF. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com. Welcome to the show. Couple of notations for Friday. First, Local for Less Ozarks. Half price, $50 certificates to Springfield Little Theaters. Exit laughing for only $25. So you buy those. It's a certificate that you buy that you then use in order to purchase the tickets. So for $25, you get $50 gift certificates, and you can use that to purchase tickets to see Exit Laughing at the Landers Theater, going on from March 14th through 23rd. Also, of course, Friday, we will be broadcasting live. It is our Friday Road Show at Scramblers, and that is sponsored by our good friends and new partners at Shirley's Heating and Air. So come out and join us on Friday. Doors open at 6 o'clock. Have yourself some delicious breakfast or have a hamburger if you'd like. That's become your go-to, has it not?
Yes, I love their hamburgers.
Hamburger for breakfast. Is it hamburger or cheeseburger?
Actually, it's a cheeseburger.
Is it just your traditional American cheese or cheddar cheese?
Yep,
Is
just
that
American cheese.
that
and
the
waffle
route you
fries.
go? I thought you were going to get a waffle last. Did you get a waffle this past week?
I did.
You said you were
yep.
going to get a waffle.
And then my little one
yes,
decided
the whole
to
family
eat.
was there.
Yes, and the little one decided to eat half of it. And I'm like, dang it.
It's quite exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Deadline to register to vote, I believe,
Is
is this
tomorrow.
It is tomorrow. And it evidently does not take a tremendous amount of time and even effort in order to do it. So if you've listened to us talk about the school board elections that are coming up, wherever it is you are, of course, we've been focusing on Springfield. But wherever you are, if you have not gotten registered to vote, I recommend that you go about doing so. If you don't know how, they should contact their county clerk, I imagine.
Yes.
When you advise that.
I would advise that.
Many of us have learned, due to COVID, the upside-down way that we have long looked at elections. And we have seen president as most important, and there were a lot of people who didn't even know you could vote for school board, honestly. And even those that didn't participate, just thought, well, is it really that important? And frankly, that's the way the establishment wanted you to view it, because the less that you were interested, the more they got to put in their own people. And they became very accustomed to that. And that's why there's such an incestuous relationship that you see oftentimes in school boards all across the country. But it is very important. These are the people that determine whether or not the divisiveness of CRT and DEI and these other philosophies that degrade just the community and the culture as a whole and lead to diminished quality of education for kids. And we see that in Springfield, unfortunately, right now, despite the fact that there are a couple of individuals on there, Dr. M being one of them, Kelly Byrne, and Steve McCoskey, who is going to be exiting. Kelly Byrne running for re-election, and then Dave Myers is the individual that will be on the ballot that is also in that mindset of focusing on education as opposed to CRT and DEI. But what we're dealing with right now is the lefties, if you will. They run the school board in Springfield, and they get there by pretending that they're anything but lefties. This is why they want to continue to have things being, quote, nonpartisan. Not that just because somebody runs as a Republican, that means that they actually are, but they've been able to get away with this for a very long time. We talked about the issue of how a lot of these organizations that recruit people to run, it never even crosses their mind to ask whether these candidates even have kids. And we, in the previous hour, noted that I believe the last 3 school board presidents did not have children of their own. Now, they may have married into children, but did not have, their birth children that then went through the school system. And I'm not a person who believes that you have to have children in order to make those decisions. What is best for education? Best for a child's education. I think, however, most people would agree that there are certain things in life that until you have children of your own, you do not have the level of appreciation for that people who do have children of their own have. I remember a conversation, this was a long, long, long time ago, with one of my best friends. And we were just talking about different movies and horror movies, and he had made the offhand comment that ever since he had his first child, he could not watch any film in which a child was harmed, that just changed him. Prior to having a child, that wasn't something that was bothersome enough to him to see a child, whether it's a movie about a kidnapping or just a horror film, that bothered him any more than anything else did. But once he had a kid, it just became different. People oftentimes perceive war differently based on whether or not their children are being deployed. And I think that there is just a built-in difference when you are in charge of a district, and if the school is failing children versus failing your child, there's just a different level of appreciation there. When your own child, or you have a child, so you understand the significance of a system that fails that child, it becomes a little more important to you, a little more meaningful. It's easier to fail children when you don't have your own necessarily, particularly in that particular system. And again, I'm not saying that is always the case, but just generally speaking, I think most people, it's just that way in it's human nature. That's life. And while I'm not an individual who believes that there should be a litmus test, or that every person who has a child would be better equipped to make decisions regarding education automatically than someone who doesn't have a child, but I do think that we perhaps pay a little less attention to that factor than we should. Got traffic coming up here in just a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 79. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 50. For your Wednesday, partly cloudy with a high near 79. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80.
Sarah Myers.
Hey, thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Hail season, it will be here soon, and whether you have hail damage from storms last year or you want the name of a great roofing company in case damage happens this year, I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. And I do also want to remind you, if you have hail damage from last year, there is still time to file a claim, but that time is running out. Now, the Pyramid Roofing Company, they offer free roof inspections so they can confirm that you do have damage, so you're not filing an unnecessary claim, and then they work through that insurance process with you so you don't have to go through it alone. So if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection, give Josh a call today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company at pyramidroofingmo.com or under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Sometimes I come across a story and I just think to myself, people are just stupid. Stupid. And listen, this is absolutely true. There was an AI conference. It was the Human X, and it billed itself as the most important AI conference of 2025.
Was Kamala there?
She was there to share her vision of the future of AI. What? How do you justify that? Everything about that's wrong. Number one, she's an idiot. And even if she weren't an idiot, we're going to believe that, let's say she was really astute as a politician, which of course she's not. At AI, now I know, of course, she was put in charge during the Biden administration of making sure that the world was ready for AI. But really, this is what the Business Wire reported last month. By the way, I have audio. The event occurred.
Good.
Yes. Human X, the most important AI conference of 2025, is proud to announce that former Vice President Kamala Harris and Nuno Sebastião, chairman of FIDZE, will headline this year's event. So she was a headliner. The two leaders will host a fireside chat on advancing artificial intelligence and its potential to build a fair, secure, and inclusive future. I don't know that Kamala Harris can explain how to dig a hole, let alone you're going to have her as a keynote speaker. That I can all but guarantee, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic here. I mean this. I can all but guarantee you every person in that audience would have been more equipped to sit on that stage and answer questions than she would have. And I'm not saying that to be mean, but the people who are there obviously are into AI. They're there for a reason. They spent their money. Maybe the company they work for sent them, or perhaps they're just interested in AI as a hobby or as entrepreneurs. They clearly have a level of understanding of AI that is probably above the rest of us. And so that is why they are there. Who are you going to deliver up to them? Kamala Harris? What are you talking about?
I really want to hear this audio.
All right, so here's part of what she had to say. And this, again, all of these people came to hear her level of expertise when it comes to AI.
So I was willing to give up whatever might be the tracking of Kamala Harris's particular fondness for nacho cheese Doritos for the sake of getting a big bag of Doritos as I watched the Oscars.
That's a consumer behavior.
And that's right, but here's the thing. At what point do we also uplift and highlight the consumer's right to also expect, and you can debate with me if it should be a right, I think it should, to expect that the innovation would also be weighted in terms of solving their everyday problems, which are beyond my craving for Doritos, but about whatever, and I know the work is happening around, the scientific discoveries, for example, to cure long-standing diseases. But I'm going to throw out another one. And you all, again, please get back to me any information you have. I would love it if there would be an investment of resources in solving the affordable housing issue in America. Like, help me with that.
She's just, as usual, all over the place.
Yeah, I did not understand. I could not follow.
One may say, well, we don't know the context. Does it matter? I mean, really? She bounced from, Doritos to just the importance of uplifting one another to affordable housing. That was all within about a 60-second period of time. I would imagine if you were someone who was a guest of this event, you were there to learn. I imagine that there was a fee, an amount that one would have to pay with the expectation that they would leave with a greater knowledge of AI than they already had, and then you find out this is what you paid for? Good Lord. Might as well have Biden up there. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. This AI event that took place in Las Vegas, in which Kamala Harris was a keynote speaker, tickets were evidently upwards of over $3,000 in some instances. And some of the other speakers that were at this event?
So there was the chief security officer of Amazon. There was a speaker from Zoom, Airbnb. There was somebody from Spotify, from Grammarly. So a lot of big names. And then their headliner was Kamala Harris.
What an embarrassing joke. There has to be a lack of... I wonder how much she got paid for that.
Yeah, no kidding.
One, I wonder if she's... I don't know that she is self-aware enough. If it were me, I would argue I know about as much about AI as Kamala Harris does. Now, you may be thinking, you know more. I don't really know a heck of a lot about AI, to be honest with you. I just don't, other than probably what is out there for public consumption. I'm not someone that you would come and ask questions. If there were things you did not know about AI, you would not come to me to ask those questions because I probably would not know anything more than you do. If I were asked to be a keynote speaker at an event in Las Vegas for AI, I would say, No. What? I don't even understand why you're asking me, because I have self-awareness. And I know Kamala Harris is not more well-versed when it comes to AI than I am. You can tell by listening to the things that she says.
Can you imagine paying $4,000 for a ticket
And
and
then-
hearing that? Unreal.
I wonder if anyone asked for a refund. Like, what is this? Is this some sort of joke? But maybe she knows that. Maybe it's just for the paycheck. Yeah, I mean, that's just it. I would be curious to know how much she got paid for that. That would be very interesting. Coming up, I think this is just a fantastic story. We were a few weeks ago, we were talking about the different J.D. Vance memes.
Oh, uh-huh.
And all of the hilarious memes that use his head and his face. And anyhow, we were talking about it and how funny it is. And just once again, it's the same thing with Trump and a lot of Trump memes. We have the ability to sort of laugh at ourselves and how that is so different than the left. And it used to be the other way around. Conservatives, Republicans were the old, grumpy people that had no sense of humor, and the left had the ability to really laugh about life and enjoy it and laugh. That was the stereotype anyhow. Well, now the Puritans are the ones on the left that essentially have a checklist of things you can and cannot say, what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, and they can't laugh about anything at all, as opposed to people on the right. And this could not be more true in understanding than the fact that there is a piece in The Atlantic by journalist Ali Breland, and her entire piece is trying to figure out, quote, why is the right willing to make fun of one of its own with memes? They don't get it. This is just beyond their comprehension why it is that people that are Vance supporters and Trump supporters will share these memes that they see as making fun of Vance. So I want to talk a bit about that coming up here in just a couple of moments. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 79. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 50. For your Wednesday, partly cloudy with a high near 79. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80.
Daily Caller has this piece that is, I think it's interesting and telling, and it's liberals baffled by concept of humor. And it notes that leftists appear mystified by the J.D. Vance meme circulating on social media. The memes, which see the vice president shape-shifted into rosy-cheeked variants of himself, have dominated X in recent weeks. The meme cycle culminated Saturday with the vice president's own participation. So Vance himself is sharing this stuff. And the left just can't figure this out. There was a think piece in The Atlantic. Journalist Allie Breland applied the full brunt of her analytical powers to understanding the unflattering J.D. Vance memes. Quote, why is the right willing to make fun of its own with memes? And the whole thing's just trying to figure this out. One of the theories is that they, quote, the Vance memes seem to contain an admission that even some conservatives don't see him as essential to the current MAGA movement. And so, they must just not really like him. I guess you just can't understand sense of humor if you don't have one. It's like trying to describe color to a person who cannot see or who has never been able to see. If you don't have the ability to enjoy life and to laugh and to not take yourself so seriously, then yeah, you probably don't get it. This is such a defining difference between people on the left and the right today. And I'd say not even isolated to people on the right, but normal people. People on the left are just sad, miserable, unhappy people who cannot even conceive or comprehend of just enjoying life and laughing about things. We played the audio during the election of Howard Stern having Kamala Harris on and talking about how mad it made him when Saturday Night Live would do skits that weren't even necessarily making fun of her, but were just joking about her. And it just made him angry to see that. And that is just a perfect notation of the way that the left is. They just, any little bit of joy, like a joy dehydration machine, like they just suck it out. And they have the inability to laugh. Their only pleasure comes from believing that they are able to inflict misery on other people or seeing what they believe is misery of other people. Trust me, I know the only feedback that we ever get from people on the left that is for them positive is if they think something bad is happening to someone that they don't like. If they believe that, Trump or Vance is suffering or conservative, something bad is happening, that's the only thing that they express joy over. And it's a sad way to live. It's a horribly sad way to live. And the fact that it is so perplexing that here is J.D. Vance, and there's all these memes going around that are using his face in these different scenarios, these shape-shifting scenarios, and laughing about it, and that J.D. Vance is part of it. And, he's not jumping in to make a point. These are Trump and Vance supporters that are sharing this stuff. And I don't guess that you can really even explain it. If a person on the left is like, but why do you find that funny? Sometimes, well, it just is. And if you don't get it, I'm sorry. It's because you don't have a sense of humor. And so it cannot be explained to you. It's just so perfect that it has gotten to the point in which they are now writing think pieces. During the Kamala and Walt's campaign, one of the things that they talked about is he made up that, it was such a cliched story. He said that they were on the campaign bus and there were a bunch of Trump supporters, and Kamala said to him, Tim, you got to remember that we're running for them too, that if we get elected, we're going to represent them too. I mean, just a dumb story that nobody in their right mind would believe. And they oftentimes talk about representing everyone and reaching everyone, but they can't even understand over half the country's sense of humor and their ability to laugh about things in life and to poke fun at themselves. They have the inability to connect with people in that way. Is it any wonder that they have an authenticity problem? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I want to share a piece with you from the Federalist. Trans activists can't admit the facts about Sam Nordquist's murder. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is, one, we have a habit in this country of media reporting people's deaths, their murders. If they fall into a certain category, it is assumed that they were targeted because of that category. And that's the way it's presented with no questions asked. But also, there are people that are part of the movement, and these are people who claim they care about these people, but they will, and this is as dark and twisted as I believe a person can get, they will use the deaths of people that were not part of a hate crime in order to falsely make people believe that it was a hate crime to further scare people that they claim that they care about. And this is one of those articles that demonstrates this. Chad Felix Green writing, no motive has been released by the police in the alleged torture and murder of Sam Nordquist, a trans-identifying woman killed in New York in early February. There is, however, sufficient evidence to confirm the alleged murder was not a hate crime. Despite this, media reports insist on forcing that narrative, as LGBT activists demand it and Democrat leaders validate it. The facts of the case are deeply disturbing, and the obsession with manufacturing an anti-trans hate crime story is making it worse. Police say that Sam Nordquist was tortured to death from December 2024 to February 2nd of 2025, when she died from abuse. An indictment accuses 7 people of being involved in her kidnapping, torture, and death. Nordquist had traveled from Minnesota to New York to visit her online girlfriend in September, then decided to stay. What happened between then and her death is still unknown, although police say she knew everyone involved, including 2 children forced to participate in the crime. The details of her torture and death are each too difficult to imagine, let alone as a series of relentless horrors. According to police, Nordquist was starved, beaten, treated like a dog, forced to eat feces and urine, tied up, and had bleach poured on her body, then left abandoned in a field. Nordquist was referred to as a man in all of the news reports, with many indicating she was transgender. She was immediately elevated as a victim of anti-LGBT hate and violence. Outfront Minnesota said, quote, "We know this arrives at a time our trans communities are facing a relentless assault of harmful policy and rhetoric across our nation." According to a post on Instagram, "We know that this landscape escalates and amplifies the individual risk of violence." Referring to this case and the murder of another trans-identifying person, Democrat Representative Rashida Tlaib argued, "Every year, trans people are murdered simply for being who they are, and black trans people are disproportionately targeted." The first openly trans-identifying member of the Minnesota State Legislature, Representative Lee Finke, stated, quote, "You deserve a whole life full of love and joy and peace, and you instead receive the cruelest violence imaginable. All of our love to Sam, to his loved ones. We will never stop fighting for our freedom. Trans liberation now." New York Civil Liberty Union organizer Shea Herbert claimed this tragedy comes at a time of nationwide attacks against trans people led by a federal administration hell-bent on erasing their existence. Transgender people are over 4 times more likely than cisgender people to be victims of violent crime, and the vast majority of victims are people of color. A Change.org petition to pressure police into escalating charges, specifically hate crime charges, gained more than 17,000 signatures. The organizer argued that the police's failure to investigate hate crime charges was shameful and disrespectful to Sam, his family and friends, and the trans community as a whole. Despite this mass assumption of anti-trans bias, the police and district attorney immediately stated the murder was not motivated by hatred of Sam's identity. The district attorney noted, quote, "At this time, we have no indication that Sam's murder was a hate crime. To help alleviate the understandable concern that his murder could be a hate crime, we're disclosing that Sam and his assailants were known to each other, identified as LGBTQ+, and at least one of the defendants lived with Sam in the time period leading up to the instant offense." Kelly Wolford, an assistant DA, noted a hate crime would make this charge about Sam's gender and about Sam's race, and it's so much bigger. To limit this to a hate crime would be an injustice to Sam. That Nordquist's torturers and killers allegedly identified themselves as LGBT and knew the victim personally are important facts. An article on the popular LGBT website Them leaves out this piece of information entirely. LGBT activists are so desperate to make this about anti-queer hatred that LGBTQ Nation, the largest LGBT news source online, attempted to connect this crime with the 1998 murder of Matthew Shepard. The article said, quote, "Like Nordquist, Shepard was allegedly killed by someone he was attracted to. Both of their bodies were discarded in rural fields after the attacks that killed them, and neither one's assailants were charged with hate crimes. Also, both were murdered during times of intense anti-LGBTQ+ political hostility." To put a finer point on their argument, quote, "Nordquist's murder has occurred at a time of queer activism against the transphobic policies of, yes, President Donald Trump, who has issued numerous executive orders seeking to eradicate the existence of trans people," end quote. Of course, we now know that Matthew Shepard's murder was also committed by gay men that he had a sexual relationship with, and the murder was over drugs, according to research by Stephen Jimenez. The far-reaching false narrative about Shepard was largely fabricated to pressure legislatures to pass laws that punish Americans for disapproving of queer sexual behavior. Even these facts no longer seem to matter. GLAAD, a prominent LGBT advocacy organization, insisted that anti-LGBTQ hate can be perpetrated by anyone, regardless of their relationship to the victim or their own gender identity or sexual orientation. Multiple studies have shown, for example, that transgender and gender nonconforming people are at increased risk of experiencing intimate violence. These LGBT activists are so insanely obsessed with anti-LGBT hate, they've created a new category where an LGBT person can commit anti-LGBTQ hate against his own partner. Ironically, they reveal an important truth in this fanatical need for victimhood. The most dangerous threat to LGBT people are usually other LGBT people, and that is according to the numbers. Now, the piece goes on, but and we'll get it posted so you can read through it if you want. There's not much more to it. It sort of summarizes and gives a couple of specific examples. But there's a reason for this, and it is to strike fear into the trans community by people who claim they care about the trans community, and ironically, by people who claim that they want trans people to not have to fear being trans in America, yet they are the ones who create the fear. It's much like global warming, where they have gotten to the point everything is global warming, or they change it to climate change, so that no matter what happens, they can claim that it's climate change. It snows too much, it's climate change. There's no snow, it's climate change. It's too hot, climate change. Too cold, climate change. Too much rain, it's climate change. Not enough rain, it's climate change. More than normal tornadoes, climate change. Less than normal. You can just go down the list. Everything is climate change. So this is why they start classifying, and they say, well, it doesn't matter. Even if a person who is trans is murdered by a lover that is also trans, that doesn't mean it's a hate crime. That way they can expand the hate crime narrative. They can show, they can list these statistics and label them all as hate crimes. So virtually 100% of every murder in which the victim is trans becomes a hate crime by their own definition, and it's for the purpose of fear. It is sick. It's the same, frankly, with the inner city black community, in which a person who is of color is most likely to die by being killed by another person of color. But what they try to instead tell you is, no, it's police officers. That's the biggest danger, because they want to scare. They want to frighten. And what they want people to believe is that the trans community is being hunted by Trump supporters, and that they are the biggest danger, and that every single time a trans person is killed, well, it is a hate crime. The translation of hate crime is clearly it's somebody who's a conservative, a Christian, or a Trump supporter. But this is all fear for the sake of frightening a community into compliance. You have to support the left. You have to vote for the left. It's their approach with virtually every silo of people that the left creates. And frankly, it's quite sick. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Kansas Territory Brewing Company. You can find them at kansasterritorybrewingco.com. Bradford Light with an ABV of 3.8%. Golden Elixir, tribute to the industrious spirit that defines the Heartland. And then a little more tropical as we get into the nicer weather. Pineapple Life Coach, infused exotic essence of ripe pineapples, ABV of 4.0% out of Washington, Kansas. And again, you can learn more at kansasterritorybrewingco.com. The Supreme Court agreed yesterday to take up a case out of Colorado brought by a Christian therapist named Casey Childs, who objects to a law on so-called conversion therapy. The court has previously declined to take up a very similar case, but apparently at this point they're going to bring it. And this is a law that says it is illegal for a person to seek out counseling if they are someone who perhaps is struggling with their sexuality and they are having feelings of homosexuality, but they feel perhaps that is immoral. They feel it is out of line with their religion, and so they want to seek guidance in getting back on track. And there are more than 20 states that have some form of banning that sort of therapy. How crazy is it that we live in a country in which one political party in particular wants to ban, particularly for kids, a form of therapy, just therapy, sitting there, talking, having a conversation regarding their sexuality, but if that child is somehow convinced and is allowed to be convinced to get a sex change operation, that is okay. Explain that to me. At least there would be consistency if you're talking about a situation where a person says government should have no involvement at all, or yes, government should stop all of it. I mean, yes, there should not be the offering of therapy or counseling for a person that is struggling with their sexuality, whichever way it is. You know, gay, straight, whatever, no sex change operations, none of that should be allowed. While one may not agree with it, at least there is a consistency there. But what sort of lunatic do you have to be to say, yes, an 8-year-old, even without a parent's permission, should be able to have irreversible sex change operations, but counseling regarding their sexuality? No, now that's just over the line. We can't have that. How insane do you have to be? That's just nutty. Trump, I wanted to get this in here before the end of the show. Trump is he's signing a disaster relief order, putting states and localities in the driver's seats of catastrophic response. This is an executive order. Evidently, he was set to sign it yesterday, have not heard otherwise. Quote, the order restores state, local, and individual empowerment in disaster preparedness and response and injects common sense into infrastructure prioritization and strategic investments through risk-informed decisions that make our infrastructure, communities, and economy more resilient to global and dynamic threats and hazard. The order emphasizes the role of states, localities, and individual leadership over federal leadership while preparing for and coping with disasters such as flooding or fires, and will streamline federal functions so local communities can more easily work with federal leaders in Washington. So this is the opposite approach that is generally taken. The current approach, or up until now, has been the federal government will come into an area that they have no concept of whatsoever and start telling the people who live in that community and run that community on a day-to-day basis how to do things in terms of a disaster. The Trump version is we need to do it the other way around. The federal government will be there to assist, whether it is through manpower or financially speaking. But when it comes to calling the shots, that's going to be done by the people who actually live there and run that community. Now, does that not seem like common sense? Total common sense. This, incidentally, is the same approach when it comes to schools and whether or not schools should be run by local communities, and then maybe the federal government be there to assist in some capacity, or should we continue the federal government laying out dictates that local communities have to work within? And it's also quite odd for a dictator to yet in another way remove power from the federal government and turn it over to the local communities where it belongs. Donald Trump, once again, failing miserably as a dictator. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.